This is part 3 of the 4.8 notes. We're going to go through example 4 on our notes, which will help you do problems number 3, 4, and 9 on your homework. So you're taking your first hot air balloon ride. Your friend is standing on level ground 100 feet away from your point of launch, making a video of the terrified look on your rapidly ascending face. I did not write this problem. How rapidly? At one instant, the angle of elevation from the video camera to your face is 31.7 degrees. So I'm actually going to pause and just make sure that we understand where that angle comes into play. So when you are first in the hot air balloon, the angle is 31.7 degrees. Okay, and then 1 minute later, the angle of elevation is 76.2. So notice that it's not from the middle line to here. That is not 76.2. 76.2 is from the ground. So this is 76.2 degrees, that whole thing. And so if I think about the triangle that's made there, that's this pink triangle here. And then the triangle that's made from the very beginning, let's make it a green triangle, has an angle of 31.7. And so my goal is to find B. B is the entire, let's see, how far did I travel in that minute? So B is not the entire thing. B is from here to here. So I want to know how far I traveled. Now, if you look, side B is not the side of the pink triangle. The entire thing A plus B is. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to find A, and then I'm going to find A plus B. And then I'm going to subtract A, because that's going to give me the leftover for part B. So I'm going to first find side A. Now let's see here. This 100 feet on the ground is going to be helpful. If I'm looking for, let me write in green because I'm talking about the green triangle. So it's probably not going to be the exact same green shade, but that's okay. So I'm looking for opposite. I'm given adjacent, which means I can set up the tangent of 31.7 is equal to A over 100. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 100, and I'm going to take 100 times tangent of 31.7. So I'm going to take 100 times the tangent of 31.7 to find that side A is equal to, it says nearest tenth of a foot, so I'll call it 61.8. So I know A is 61.8. So let me label that over here because I'm going to erase my work to give myself more room. So A is 61.8. So I found A. Next, I'm going to find the distance that's representative of A plus B. And so what that requires me to do is find this side, this whole thing of the pink triangle. And so I'm looking for that whole side. And I think instead of calling it A plus B, I think I'm just going to call it like, I don't know, I'll call it X. That way I don't have to write A plus B. I'm just going to call it X. So this is using the 76.2 degrees. So I'm going to say the tangent of 76.2 is equal to this X over 100. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 100, and that's how I'm going to find this X that represents this whole distance. So I'm going to take 100 times the tangent of 76.2 and get that whole distance is 407.1. So this whole long distance is 407.1. And, I don't know why I put a 6 in there, just 0.1. And then if I know that A was equal to 61.8, then in order to find B, I'm going to take the total 407.1 minus the A, which is 61.8, and find that B is equal to 345.3 feet. So why don't you try this practice problem involving Mount Rushmore, pause the video, and then we'll go over it. So you're standing on level ground 800 feet away from Mount Rushmore, looking at the sculpture of Abraham Lincoln's face. The angle of elevation to the bottom of the sculpture, so that's the bottom of the sculpture, is 32 degrees. So if I wanted to make a right triangle, I could make a right triangle. I don't know how far this is, so I'll call it A. It says the angle of elevation to the top probably of the sculpture is 35 degrees. So I don't know, let's use orange. So to the top of his head, the angle of elevation, that whole thing is 35. So it's not 32 and then another 35, it's 35 total. And so I'll call, it says find the height of the sculpture of Lincoln's face. So I'll call the sculpture of Lincoln's face B. And so I'm going to take the same approach. First, I'm going to find A, and then I'm going to find this entire distance using the orange triangle, and then I'm going to work backwards to find B. I'm going to subtract. So I'm going to set up that the tangent of 32 is equal to A over 800. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 800 and get that 800 times the tangent of 32 is equal to, this is saying nearest tenth of a foot. It's nearest tenth of a foot, so I'll call it 499.9 is equal to A. And then I'm going to set up to find this entire distance is what I'm finding when I say that tangent of 35 is equal to this whole thing, so I'll call it X again, over 800. So when I multiply by 800, I get 800 times the tangent of 35 is 560.2. So I get that this whole thing is 560.2. So if I want to know how long his face is, I'm going to take 560.2 minus 499.9, and I'm going to get 560.2 minus 499.9. That is height is 60.3 feet. And if you want to Google that, you are welcome to fact check me. But that's how you do examples. Example 4, which will help you do problems 3, 4, and 9 on your homework. Problem 3, not directly, but it's going to be the same idea where you have to think about triangles and add and subtract to find what you're looking for. So if you have any questions over these problems, please feel free to email me or use the Help Me Solve This tool on my math lab. But problem 3 is a little different. I think 4 is a little more like this, and 9 is too.